Good morning. This is the Chuck Tiemann, and I want to discuss a little bit about pole safety this morning. So we'll cover several different areas. Let's begin with canting a pole. I recently had a little incident canting a pole at my farm, setting a lift pole, and we had about a 16th of a pole cant to go. And the cant hook slipped about an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches at the very most, and then caught. And suddenly my right shoulder popped and I went to the ground. The safest part of the job was canting a pole, and it injured my shoulder. I'm doing well. My shoulder's feeling better, but it's these little things we always take for granted. Since this incident, I've had several of my good friends call me and tell me about incidences where that cant hook slipped and caused minor injury or slight injury. It's something that's simple. It's something we take for granted. And all I'm saying after what happened to me is just be careful with canting a pole. Tamping poles properly. There are many different ways that people tamp poles. Sometimes they don't do it very well and they don't do it right. And many times the poles will lean after a strong wind. And we want to make sure that we take time and have good work practices on tamping poles. Recently, I was watching a co-op and they had two hand tamps going with one shovel. They got a good tamp on that pole. I was very proud of how slow they took to put the dirt in the hole and tamp properly. Others are using the backfill stone, and this is working very, very well. But please take time to tamp a pole properly. In a little bit, you'll see some other slides where poles were not properly tamped. I guess the good thing is they have a high side of the pole. Electrolysis. It's something we kind of don't think a whole lot about, and I have several co-ops in Indiana that talk about this. Now, I happen to be in Oklahoma, and electrolysis was a common thing in our system because we have so many gas lines and such like that going through there. In Indiana, I think a lot of the mining industry, the electrolysis is much higher, and there may be other certain industries in the state of Indiana that would cause a high incident rate of electrolysis. Make sure your guys are secure, and especially when you're working on those three-phase poles and you're doing anything and jerking around on them or pulling on them or cutting the wire loose or whatever, that can sure get you in a lot of trouble in a hurry. So pay attention, make sure the guys are safe and the guys are in the ground properly and they're completely attached. Electrolysis, something we don't talk much about. Tamping a pole properly. My boss, John Elkins, had brought this to my attention about some poles that he had seen and had discussed with his son about proper pole tamping. And I said, I'm kind of glad you brought this up, John, because this is certainly something that we need to talk about. And I know these hydraulic tamps are great, and I am all for a hydraulic tamp. I am 110,000% for a hydraulic tamp. But many times what we'll do is we'll get two or three shovels going on that tamp because it is tamping so fast and so quick. We need to kind of slow down a little bit, and I gave that example the other day about two hand tamps and one shovel. That really shouldn't change just because it's hydraulic. You know, one shovel, one tamp works real well. And just take your time and make sure you get a good tamp on that pole. As I said earlier, that stone backfill is really good and works very well, and a lot of co-ops have had much success with that. They even say it's easier to pull poles down the road with. Raking poles properly. That's kind of a trick and an art, and different engineers have different theories and ideas on it. Certainly, linemen have different ideas on that. But as you can see, this is a pole that has excessive strain, and it is pulled over quite a bit. And I can tell you that this pole was not properly raked when it was set. I happen to know the person that is in charge of this co-op. I talked to him a little bit about it, and he said that they had had contractors do that, and he was going to bring that to their attention, and that was something that he was not had not caught, and he wants those poles raked properly. Raking a pole is very important as well, and it keeps the everything straight and nice and neat, and it's just a very important part of pole setting and line building. Washouts. Pay attention to washouts. Sometimes they can be a little deceptive, and even if it looks like they've got a little bit of earth around that pole, it can still be very thin soil on one side of it. It can get you in trouble in a hurry, so pay attention to washouts. We've had excessive rain in many parts of the country, so as you're going out on trouble calls and it's late at night, take time to shine that spotlight or that flashlight down at the bottom pole. Make sure that it is secure, it is in the ground, the proper depth. This is an example of a little bit of washout on the butt of the pole. But if you really look closely there, you can see that there's just not a whole lot of dirt holding that pole on down, and it's maybe 5.5 foot deep according to the brand, but reality is there's probably only about 3 foot of dirt holding that pole. And this slide is just a little bit of job pride, what I call job pride. And yes, I'm out in Oklahoma where I live, where my farms are. And my good friend Clinton White, the guy that helped pull me off the pole, first day on the job, and he had worked for us a couple summers while he was going to Lyman College. And we always took pride in how straight we could get the poles and how straight we could get that line. And as you can see, I took some pictures there about how straight that line is. Job pride. I think it's something that we all kind of take for granted. And I want us to all always have our own little mark on our own little line that we build, and that people can go back 30 years later and say, hey, so-and-so built that line. And I can tell by the way he did this or he did that. I always took a lot of pride in stuff like that. I just think it's kind of cool. This line right here was built, and it has had 2 storms with straight line winds of 70 mile an hour or more. And as you can see, the poles are tamped properly, and those lines have stayed straight. Job pride. I love it. I kind of want to end this program today on just some pole safety things to remember. This year alone, we've had 217 poles fall. 153 have been rotten. This is national numbers that we have. Indiana's obviously in these numbers somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but I think it's something we need to always think about. And what's below the earth? Rotten poles, fallen poles that can fall very easily because of whatever washouts or cutting the wire and the pole not stable, whatever the case may be. Before we climb a pole, take time at 3 o'clock in the morning, get a 3-pound hammer and hit the stew out of that bottom of that pole and make sure it's okay. Look up that pole with that spotlight at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and make sure that there's not a lot of woodpecker holes or that it's not decayed 10 feet from the top or 15 feet from the top. Check the brand depth. Make sure that pole is properly set and that it hasn't been cut off and that you're climbing something that's only 2, 3 foot in the ground. Rock that pole before you climb. I know that sounds crazy, but take time to rock that pole before you climb that pole. If you can rock that pole, do not climb it. Be sure to secure the pole before cutting a pole with a strain on it. We've had accidents in the state. We've had near misses in the state where we cut wire off an old pole and the pole snapped on us. Take time to make sure that pole is secure. Y'all be careful, and thank you for pole safety tips. Have a great day. I want to end this program on some pole safety tips. We've had 217 fallen poles this year, 153 of them being rotten. That's national numbers. Think about, we're just barely into this year. 6 months into it. We've had 2 months off, and those are the numbers we have nationally speaking. That's a lot of risk out there, fellas. So take time to take a 3-pound hammer at 3 o'clock in the morning and hit the stew out of that pole and make certain it is okay and safe to climb. look for woodpecker holes, look for just things that are red flags to us that would cause us to maybe put ourselves at risk, and we want to eliminate that. Um, Take time to check that brand depth. Make sure somebody didn't cut the butt of that pole off, and that pole's really 2.5, 3 foot in the ground rather than the 5.5 or 6 foot that'd be required. Take time to rock that pole before you climb it. If you rock that pole, do not climb it. If you're cutting a pole or cutting wire off a pole with strain on it, make certain that you've got that pole secured somehow. Sometimes you just got to get a digger on it. You got to get a hook on it. Guys, let's just be safe, not having any injuries from pole safety. Y'all be careful. Thank you for what you do, and be safe out there. God bless you.